So today felt like a good day to re-record Spiritual Grief, the final in the circle, because it's been just over a year since my dad passed away. And so I wanted to share a lot of things about grief from a spiritual perspective, but also to add in how big this story has been for me, because it's been weaving its way while I've been writing my own soul story, Awaken, and also been bringing up a lot of stuff that's going on around the witch wound, and I'll speak into that in a lot more detail. And also my true passion about why I speak out and do what I do is to support other people when they're writing or speaking or bringing their own soul story forward, because it's big work. And it will be challenging, and it will take you on these cataclysmic awakening and shaking and activating journeys. So, yeah, there's a lot to share today. So grab yourself a cup of tea and settle in. So, yeah, let's start with my dad. I really wanted to honour him this year. Me and my mum and my sister went to where he used to fish and was wandering around by the lakes to just be near his land. And I loved that because Dad was a fisherman, and so we couldn't be more different. He grew up with a love for shooting and fishing and roaming around nature that way. I grew up now vegan. Plant food is kind of my world. I've kind of dabbled in going vegetarian for a little while, and it just didn't feel right, and I've come back to my body and doing a bit more of a vegan-esque vegetarian thing. And so it's just a completely opposite path, but I found great reverence in how he used to fish. I just felt the spirit of him as I was walking the lands, and I looked out on these fishermen platforms and was just amazed by how they looked like mini little stages. And I thought this was my dad's sacred space, to fish, to be calm, to be one at nature. And he always used to say to me, if you're going to eat meat, you should know how to kill it, and you should know how to be at one with it, to be at peace with it. And so I have a lot of respect for him for that, for his own craft, and for the way that he found peace and quiet. And so wandering around where he used to fish felt very sacred. And because I'm a medium, which means I speak to spirits if they're no longer here, because they're always here. And I think that's the biggest illusion and lie that we're sold, that people are gone. They're certainly not gone. They're certainly not forgotten. And he was very alive with me that day, and still is in my memory. I still talk to my dad a lot, and I have that connection, while saying I really miss him in the physical. I never want to bypass that level of grief, that having your parent, I can only speak into that for me. I've lost grandparents, but I found that losing a parent had a next level to it, like a loss of who you are, especially for someone like me who doesn't have children. So this is my ancestry, my lineage changing, and my place in the world changing. So I felt very unsafe around that over this past year, but also miss the person. No one can replace your family, they just can't. And so for those that have not gone through this, I'd say cherish the time that you have. I really feel that we're often taught to fight against each other in society. We can see that. But we're also taught, and it feels like it was seeded in some spiritual new age edges, that, your parents are toxic, or these people are toxic. And while that might be true for some people, and if it's true for you and you're better off without your parents in your life, and that makes sense for you, absolutely, everybody knows what's right and wrong for them. But if it's something that you can wrestle with, work out and heal, I can only say from my own journey, the healing was the most powerful part. And this is my dad's scarf, so I've had that in the background with me just to keep present with me on this channeling. And so, yeah, I think that brings up a really important thing about how to move on. You know, how do we move on from losing loved ones? And I think the honest answer is that we don't. We just learn how to live differently. And that's what it is. Like any big change in your life, you learn a lot from it. You grow as a person. For me, I went deep diving into spiritual rescue work. I really understood the journey of the soul in a much deeper way. It came at a time when society has been ripped apart at its edges with a lot of what I name dark agenda stuff coming up to the surface. And I really think it's time for us to stand by our own soul's truth and go, what is the journey of the soul really? You know, where do we go after we die? That's a really good question to ask yourself in life. What is happening to us on this earth at this time? Another really important question. And what is my soul here to do? What's most important to my soul? And I would say, you know, ask those questions of yourself, even if you haven't lost someone. Go through your life asking those questions, because it was actually that question that led me on my soul's path. I had a dark night of the soul, and I thought, what if I'm halfway through my life and this is it, this existence I was living, I was working in casting, and I was on the rat race of London life. I was like, if I'm halfway through my life, how many regrets am I going to have? And so going through the death passage with anyone, you know, all of that feeling comes up. And that used to pain me about my dad, that his freedom was taken away from him. He got ill in the middle of lockdown, so a horrible, tough year for everybody. And things were taken away from him, and then he got sicker. And then, you know, he was literally housebound because of the illness. And so that is, you know, a sad way to go, and makes me cherish him being so free now, that he's free to go wherever he likes. And I actually wrote a poem about this that I spoke at his funeral, and you can find it on my channel. I'll link it in here, Where Have You Gone? And it was kind of written from everyone that was, you know, suffering with losing someone and knowing that they're never really gone completely. And there was an essence, certainly with my dad, of like, oh, you're free now. You're free. And that was very much what this walk, going to visit his lands and setting him free again, was for me this past week. And I think that's the important thing, to be free in soul as well as on the land now. And I feel that that's been the time, that the chaotic time we've been in, about our freedoms, what makes us really free, and what helps free our souls. And so that is a really important thing to play around and think into. And that kind of leads me on to witch wounds, which is coming up massively in the collective right now. It's like we've gone through this period of a sense of divine justice. And by divine justice, I mean that there is what's happened, as far as I can speak into from being a medium and accessing my soul's own journey. So my witch history is personally gotten through my soul story, through accessing my soul's records and seeing the lifetimes I've lived, and seeing how many times I was persecuted, killed for being a witch, killed for speaking my truth, killed for trying to be free on the earth and live my life as I wanted. You know, some of us were named heretics, witches, healers, mediums, the work. So we've had a hard time of it. We've gone through the ringer, let's say. And lately, because I've come round full circle and been finishing my first play, Awaken, which is about this witch history from my soul's perspective, I've looked again at the kind of laws that were present out there throughout the witch history and how they persecuted the gift of mediumship again and again and again. So what happened was the laws that were out there that came in were to originally set out to kill anyone that was practicing witchcraft. And that was no matter how they were practicing it. So we've got laws that say you cannot work in the way that mediums and healers and channelers and light workers work today. So think about that link, about how much the witchcraft laws have in common with if you're a healer or a spiritual person today. So they were saying that if you channeled, you worked with spirit, that you were basically the devil and you should be punished by death. Okay, so then they decided, actually we might make the laws a bit looser. And by making them looser, this came through Queen Elizabeth, who was actually working with high occult magic with John Dee. So was it making it a looser law for the people, or was it for those instead, so that they could work with astrology and work to bring in new systems and work out how to get ahead of people through magical means? And then following that, we had King James, which most people know. He wrote demonology, he wrote how to spot and kill witches, and he wasn't a fan of witches. And so a lot of healers, again, mediums, cunning folk, got wiped out. This is very prominent in Scotland. But as I've been looking into their history again with fresh eyes, and when I say fresh eyes, how I look into history is I read my soul records, I channel, and then I read what's out there as well. And I kind of start to read between the lines of what's there. Suddenly go, this doesn't make sense anymore. This doesn't quite add up. Or this is actually somebody else's story and it's actually fictitious. It's not coming from a soul, it's coming from an illusion or a perpetuate propaganda campaign, because there was a lot of those around the witches. Many, before we had the media, many pamphlets were written about how to catch a witch, how to spot one. They were often cast as lewd and outspoken women. So it was a big persecution of women. But also deeper than that, it was the feminine gift of intuition and healing and care and all the things that, was very women's roles that was dying out to bring a new science, a new period of enlightenment, a new period of medicine in. And so the medicine folk had to be killed off and died out to bring this in. So it's very barbaric, very, very barbaric time. And it's still having its wounds in the way the systems are set up today. It really is, because we lost a lot of herbal medicine. We lost a lot of faith in channeling spirit. And we lost a lot of protection practices, which is very, very important when I speak into the witch wound now. Because when you work as a healer or a medium or a witch, whatever label you want to have, or psychic, you see beyond the veil. So you see beyond the veil, that's why I can read souls, and that's why I'm psychic, because that is who I am. I believe everybody has this gift. You just have to hone it. It's a craft. Work it, use it, learn it. And like anything, if you have the call, then it is the call for you. You want to nourish this gift. That is what I call divine justice, getting this gift back and putting it in the hands of healers and not harmers. And that is the problem, because when you can see beyond the veil and when you can channel and understand spirit, what that means is you understand that there are forces out there of not good. They're to attack the human spirit. They're to harm. I've had it myself, where I've been having some really horrible curse magic thrown at me, and I've had an anti-attack, which I've spoken of. And I just want to tell people how to deal with that, because the spiritual community don't have like an equity or a support network of how to get through this. It's mainly through healers helping out and speaking out about things and, sharing practices. But when you're getting attacked and they're trying to use magic against you for forces of evil, for harm, hateful words, speech, first, feel into that energy of that and don't accept it. Push it right back. I do not consent to your nasty hate speech. I do not consent to you sending me cursed dark magic. I do not consent. I am working for the good of humanity, for the souls of humanity. I do not consent to your dark magic. First, there's the consent practice. Second is feeling into your own energy. Is there any rips or tears in your energy body? Any way that energy is getting drained or leaked? Any self-work that you need to do to really clean up your spirit, your energy, so that nothing can get in, nothing can harm you, because it's not at your frequency. So then you do a little bit of the work, and I often tell loads of people, energy work, do the chakra clearing. If you have your own practice, great. If you don't have a practice, I've got those meditations on my channel for a reason, to just give you a bedrock until you start to just intuitively feel in, know what's off, and know how to heal it. And then the third practice is a beautiful mantra that came through to me this morning when I was going for a run, which is, I am divine, you are divine. I am divine, you are divine. So just seeing the divine in anything, and so anything that's not divine, that's not spirit, will just drop away out of your consciousness, and to keep coming back to that space. Because it can be difficult when you do a lot of the warrior, dark agenda work, outing anything that's fallen consciousness. You can have a lot come at you, or you can look at the world and feel quite sad about the state it's in. And so it's always that good reminder to come back to the light, come back to divine, come back to your soul, and come back to be nourished, but also to look with the eyes of love at everything. And that can sometimes be a harder practice. And so I speak into that because I've had many great friends around me, great teachers, many people I work with or surround me, my family, are great teachers of, how I can be better in the world, how I can, heal and wrestle with my own wounds. And bring it back to a soulful existence, because that's what we want, right? And so on that, I wrote a few notes about what I wanted to most bring through about the witch wounds, because it's something that I'm so passionate about. And the big one, spiritual persecution, being cast out and being put aside in society for speaking your truth. Many centuries that we've been killed for that. And at this time, we're still getting targeted, yes. And there's still an essence of feeling like, where's my tribe? Am I alone here with my spiritual truth? Many of you might have spoken out in ways over the past few years and either been, pushed out of groups for that. I've had it all. I've seen it all. I understand. There is that there. There is that still, that persecution that's still happening today. But at the same time, we are rising, and it is time for healers, spiritual workers, the soul group to take center stage in their own life. I've been working with this in workshops on land with people, and I always say, let your soul take center stage. And so I'm doing that in my life. That's how I'm leading with 5D Theatre. I set it up to produce my own plays, to put my soul story center stage. Not only that, but to speak it. I put me, cast me firmly center stage in that, in the leading role. That's important, because this voice needs to be heard. And beyond that, it's important because I'm a medium and I'm talking about history, and I'm telling stories about history from a medium's perspective. So I was looking for somebody that would, be spiritually inclined to help shape my theatre and to push it to the forefront. And then I was like, that's me. That's me. That's what I'm going to do. And so I step and speak center stage in my story. And now I'm helping that story move and grow and evolve, and to also nourish my spiritual community, because there's a lot of us that, have stories to tell, to speak, to step into. We might have programs to build, to shape the new earth. And I think what happens to a lot of us is that we lose our voice unconsciously. There is the fear of being harmed when we speak our truth. Absolutely. I understand that. That takes some healing work again and again and again. There is the fear of being visible in case you get attacked. I understand that. I've been going through that again and again. And there is the fear, the deeper fear of being you somehow, in all your magnificence. Because you came here to change the world, to change the paradigm. And can you be that magnificent? Can you hope that big? Can you dream? Can you make the impossible possible? Can you do alchemical magic? Yes. But it takes a big old dream. So it's time to stop being cast out from anywhere. It's time to speak your truth everywhere. And it's time to be really you, to write those stories, to teach your collective, to lead your tribe, and to change the paradigm. And so with all of that being said, the way I'm helping with that is looking at myself and turning up and writing my story and keeping myself center stage in that. The other way is I've got Channel Your Soul Story course running again in March the 6th. So I will drop that link. That is for everybody that's wrestling with how do I write a spiritual story? How do I channel? And I'll speak into that in a moment. And also, am I a healer? What business do I want to bring forward? It helps everybody there. Everything that I'm passionate about, everything that I'm doing, I share that through the soul's journey. Because most of all, once we find out what our soul's doing here at this time, we can then do the real work. And so why I'm very passionate about channeling, and that's why I called it Channel Your Soul Story, is because when you work in this paradigm and you learn to channel, you can channel anything. You can channel the light, you can channel the dark. You can often go through phases where you're channeling so many other spirits, loved ones that have passed on. That's a great connection to have, or angelic spirits, or feeling this light force. And sometimes that means you lost connection with yourself. You're so busy out there connecting with all there is that you're not connecting with your soul. And that's why I bring people back to the power of the soul, your soul, because it's your unique template. No one else has got your soul. That's why no one else can write your story. No one else can build your work, your new business. No one else can do it for you. This is your soul trying to speak to you. So often we've fallen out of right relationship with our soul. The other practice I feel important about bringing forward and just talking into awareness is channeling both dark and light beings. So false light beings often manifest and appear as light beings. There are trickster spirits the world over. They are very much there, the astral realm, the fourth dimension, the world between realms is very much prominent at this time. It's like leaking into the earth is how I see it. So we're starting to see all traumatic timelines. We're starting to understand past life trauma on another level, but we're also seeing how we've harmed, what harm's been done. But deeper than that, we're starting to see this energetic force on the earth that isn't for the good of humankind. And that's been playing out in so many different ways, getting, people to hate each other, tearing societies apart, tearing apart the human soul, disconnecting us from the human soul. And there's still agendas trying to weave that out and work that out. But if you are a light worker and someone trying to bring in the light and bring in the truth and expose any kind of these paradigms, you have to learn a level of mastery of going, do you know what? I recognize the dark. I'm even going to witness the dark. I might even speak into the dark and understand it, but I'm going to get it away from my body, away from me, and I'm not going to use the dark as power. And so there's a very seductive edge of channeling the dark. It's what I call curse magic, which it becomes very self-centered because you will rise, but it will be harmful to other people because it's service to the self, which is what Satanism is at its core. It's do what thou will, serve the self. You are the God force. I am God. And while I think that we're all sparks of the divine, absolutely, we are not of the fallen God consciousness, which is trying to dominate the earth, power over paradigm. And that is really kind of what happened to the witches back then. And so I want to speak into a little bit about what I learned from writing Awaken in the 17th century, because I write it in two periods. I write the story from 2023 about a maidservant and healer that comes to the bed of a man, and he's haunted by the memory of killing her as a witch in the past life. And what happens in the play is then you then journey back and see that past life, but not from his perspective, from hers, from her story, her eyes, and her channelings and her knowing. Mine. That's how it got so close to me and my story, through channeling and searching for what was the real witch history according to me. And according to me, I learned it through mediumship, remote viewing, and peering into my soul and finding my story and giving voice to that. Giving voice to the medium witch's story, the healers, and not giving too much power over to the harmers, because, this was why witches were really killed. They were killed in barbaric, torturous ways. And that only has to be the work of a bad force to want to kill and maim and torture others. And so what ended up happening, even though my story is very much based in London and around London, because that is where my ancestral roots are, and I'll talk a little bit more about my mediumship lineage that works through in London, is that I realised that I wanted to name one of the witches that was killed in my play, and I named her Sarah Spindler, who was one that got killed in Bury St Edmunds by Matthew Hopkins and John Stern. And this was very interesting to me because I was looking at it in more detail only over this weekend, and I saw what was going on at the time of these killings, because they managed to kill over 240 people only in 14 months. It was a massive, he was called the Witchfinder General. The General. And that's the important part that I missed out of his name, because there was the Civil War raging going on at the same time. And there was a meeting in Bury St Edmunds in the January when the biggest witch hanging was happening later that year, only a few months later. And Matthew Hopkins was part of that council, which was to bring in this new army that gave parliaments and Puritans control to overthrow the king and to have their own rights. It was bringing in an army. So you've got these two people that could go and wipe out 240 people by their own laws. Then they were changing the laws. And what was said about Matthew Hopkins in records that we could find is that he had in the Mistley Inn, which is the place that he brought in Essex, he had very famous people on his record. So he had MPs there, he had astrologers. So he was weaving with people in positions of power. And that's why he could go around and butcher and maim these people. But what were those people against? Why were they really killed? Because we know that they were misaccused of witchcraft. But why were they really accused? What were they speaking out against? What movement were they trying to do? What ways were they trying to live that this new army was trying to eradicate? Because I think that's the interesting question when you look at history with brand new eyes and you look into it a little bit deeper. Was there some mediums, some healers, some cunning folk, some wisdom keepers there? Was there some freedom speakers speaking out about something different? And through fear and the persecution of a witch, they were wiped out. And in came this army, this war that led to other things. And we see it again and again when wars arrive, people are in fear, people are persecuted. This is a really dark pattern that plays out, but it's playing out again and again. So we really do need to look at history with new eyes. And that history, when we look at it with new eyes, brings me back to London, to Cecil Husk, which was my great grandfather, who was a medium working in London. But I've been looking at records about Cecil even deeper over this weekend. I've had quite a deep dive of research about why my play is so important, why is it so important to me, and what am I trying to change and bring awareness to? Because I believe the true justice for witches is about getting justice for mediums and healers and cunning folk. Because my great-grandfather was affected by the witchcraft laws, and so was every healer today. Because the witchcraft laws changed into, and only in the 1950s, the Fraudulent Mediums Act. So you've got a Witchcraft Act which was saying these people are devils. And don't get me wrong, I've spoke many times about the dark side of witchcraft. I am not in full support of the dark side at all. But I will tell you the mediums, the healers and the cunning folk were trying to protect you against it all along. So where was the dark side of witchcraft playing out, and who got away with it? Was it the ones that killed the witches? I asked myself again and again and again. I know the answer, but I'm presenting this for everyone else to do their own research and look deeper into what really happened and what happened on your soul's knowledge. Go deep down, dive inside rather than dive out there all the time. And so the Witchcraft Act changed due to Helen Duncan being the last one tried on the Witchcraft Act, who was a medium who brought truth through. She brought truth about what had happened in a war again, and a ship going down as she uncovered it. And so she got targeted by the police and arrested for basically bringing out evidence. And there was a lot of times when seances weren't allowed to happen. What were they so afraid of? People getting together and speaking to the spirit, which they've always been afraid of, which is why the witchcraft laws came in the first place. Is it really that scary, people getting together and working with spirit? And so there was an article that my great-grandfather spoke about saying he wasn't Lucifer. He's not worshipping the devil. He's working with spirit, and that was his craft. And he had so many attacks, and he's named the fraudulent medium because of someone saying that he faked something with a cloth instead of a spirit. And he tries to explain in another article, if you don't get the world of spirit and how you can move your soul forward. And there was another article that said, because he went blind in his later years and he ended up channeling a soul that hadn't passed on. And they were like, how ridiculous, he's not channeling dead spirits anymore. And I just thought, how ridiculous. If you're a medium, you channel souls. You don't just channel people that are over the other side. And I was like, thank you, great-grandfather, for teaching something that I've been trying to talk about so much, that a medium doesn't just channel those that have passed on, because we all have souls. The land, living people that have passed on, spirits, everything has a soul's consciousness, everything has a light. Unless it doesn't, it's artificial intelligence, it's inorganic matter. And that's the more important thing to watch out for, rather than the soulful, soul-connected mediums. And so, with all that, I kind of want to come full circle into sacred space, reclamation, and bringing in the New Age theatre. I call it New Age because I know that the New Age has sometimes been infiltrated by different things. So New Age is the paradigm I'm trying to bring in, that we tell new stories that are revolutionary, activating, and I mean those words in the best possible terms, that change the paradigm and bring forward this fifth dimensional reality of all we can be and all our supernatural truth that has been hidden and buried and repressed throughout lifetimes. And so, I want to say that my dad is a massive part of that journey for me as a medium, staying connected with him, having to guide through his soul, and now feeling that his support, his hand is firmly on my back, supporting me, willing me on to do these stories and to take centre stage in my own life, and to bring sacred seance back inside theatres in honour of my great-grandfather, and not just say it's for entertainment purposes, which is how the laws changed and kept us suppressed, but to say it's for the good of the soul, to bring this truth through, to change the storytelling paradigm. And so I really look forward to sharing my soul story awaken. I'm on that trajectory now to get it out into spaces, places. But also if you've got your own soul story to access, to activate, to speak about, to write about, then definitely come and join me on the course on the 6th, or come and book a one-to-one soul session. There's soul story sessions designed to get you deep into the heart of your soul story, because there's nothing more powerful and important at this time, because I believe stories are going to change the paradigm, because look at the power history has to tell the story from the winner's perspective. Well, I think us spiritual folks, because we keep rising and speaking, are the true winners. I think humanity needs to be the winner, and it needs to tell our story now.